We believe that wealth is a journey, and that this is your jumpstart to trading success. Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Trader's Mindchat Show, where we believe that wealth is a journey and that this is your jumpstart to trading success. I'm Mike.
And I'm Melissa. We have a great show for you today. We have Jacob Baynham here, who is a writer and a freelance journalist for many well-known magazines, such as Outside, Men's Journal, and he recently published an article in Men's Health titled From Alone to a Loner, which is dealing with feelings of isolation that many people have been experiencing during the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that this is a great reason why we're having him on the show, is that this is so true for traders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's maybe it's exacerbated by the pandemic, but traders feel isolated historically for as long as I've been in this space. Like I've heard people speaking about isolation, feeling siloed, and that being a major issue.
What are some ways that, before we have him on, we're going to talk about some ways that we have been dealing with these feelings ourselves, and how are ways that we're going to be looking to break out of this cycle. So Mike, how have you been feeling isolated throughout the pandemic, or even just some feelings of isolation as a trader?
It's interesting. For years, I always considered myself as kind of like just being like average Joe, right? Not to try
average
to
Mike, right?
to be an average Mike, but the truth of the matter is, and it's not to be like, I'm exceptional or whatever, but it's more along the lines of that, I feel as though I think differently, I feel that, take a look at this show, for example, right? Our job is hosts of a podcast now, right? Job is a trader. Job is an influencer. Job is an author. Like a couple of years ago, those were just completely things in outer space. So yeah, in that regard, it's a little bit isolating. Sure, we have a network of people now, people that have come on the show, so some really great people that have become friends. But as far as family, as far as neighbors and older friends go, this is still kind of somewhere in outer space.
Mm-hmm. And it's not something that we're not able to see them all the time, whether when we do communicate with them, it's either Zoom and it's really just a quick, how are you, catching up with the family and things of that sort. You don't have that one-on-one connection where you can really go deep about some of the topics that might be troubling you.
Yeah, and from the trading perspective too, because most people aren't trading, or people are getting in and trading as a hobby, and hearing about things GameStop and when things start catching headline news and then people start just getting in, it's still not to the point where if you go and tell your family hey, I'm thinking of trading for a living, people look at you like you have 3 heads and are from Mars, right? Maybe we're close to being from Mars, but it's still a little ways away.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's out of the norm of you don't fall into the boxes that we had to check off when we were kids of what our career choice was going to be?
At least for our generation, right? Back in the day, born in '79, but. It was you go to school, you work hard, you get good grades, you get a nice steady desk job somewhere, you get your benefits, you work there, and then you retire, and maybe then you go out and enjoy life, or you have your time off or whatever. Those were the things. So
trading didn't fall into
trading did not
bracket,
trading didn't fall into that bracket, at least in my world, right? Growing up predominantly middle class, inner city kind of stuff, and
And your family was pro-union too, so
yeah. So it was like kind of like Michael J. Fox in that show. What was it, Family Ties?
Yeah.
So being this conservative or like my beliefs are my beliefs. Like I'm not going like one way or the other, but like as far as entrepreneurial set, like risk taking, like trading was not something that my parents they're proud now, like what ended up, but like at the time,
like trading look like what?
Yeah, like trading's gambling. Like don't do it. Like I tried it once. Like please don't.
But I think this is so true. Even for me, like you checked off the box. For me, when I was in advertising, I worked at a media firm for many years, and feelings of isolation, I felt that way at my day job. So before I took the plunge and decided to go after my passions, and now here I am. It was really isolating being in a job where you just didn't feel fulfilled, or you just couldn't really connect with other people. And especially as a lot of moms out there, we now are working from home. A lot of the responsibilities of doing remote learning with our children have fallen upon us. And it was Kamala Harris just said that 2.5 million women are out of work right now because they've either been forced out or their businesses have closed down. Or there's a lot like the retail, restaurant, as well as those type of daycare, jobs have been taken away, and so a lot of those responsibilities still predominantly fall on women to care for the children, elderly parents, and people who are most at risk for this type of virus. So I think that this is something where our village has been taken away from us. That where it takes a village to raise a family. We don't have that village, so it really falls on us. So all that stress, that anxiety, has really made us feel a little bit more isolated in this time. And I felt that way too. And luckily I do have a great support network with Mike as well as with my family and friends. And things are, definitely looking with the warmer weather coming up. Hopefully, and the vaccine, that things are going to be looks like a more hopeful future for all of us. I think that this is something that I've struggled with myself. Feeling like I wish I could be with my friends and not just over Zoom. But as much as this is still, how great and lucky are we to have this type of technology to still keep us connected in this time where maybe 30, 40 years ago this would not have been possible.
Yeah, that's an important reminder too, and to have a default setting of gratitude. Right, like the pandemic, lockdowns, all those things. But being grateful for what we have. We're able to connect this way. Where what would have been had this been 30 years ago, right? No internet or having the ability to be able to trade from anywhere and make a living from anywhere.
And I love, what was it, the Chinese symbol for crisis means opportunity.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. Like how many great businesses have now flourished or grown out of this pandemic. And as troubling as hard as it has been, it's opened doors. Yeah, it's opened doors for people who may have felt stuck or felt like they were trapped in a position or a job that they were unhappy with, to finally see that we're not going to live forever. We are, we're on this earth for, limited time, that we need to do what's right for us and live the best life we can, and to figure out what that path is.
Yeah, and that's kind of like something that you were saying earlier too, where when things started to really get locked down, I forget exactly how you phrased it before, but my default back then, this time last year, right? Around March, was when the lockdowns really started happening.
Yeah, especially here in New York. Yeah.
So my default back then was just markets crashing, all this, oh my God, people are freaking out. What can I do to help, right? So free webinars, did that for 2 weeks straight of just free coaching, whoever's there could come in. But it wasn't just seeing opportunity and then going for that. No, it was the preparation of 20 years of having been trading and starting to learn and build this, and then it's just the reaction was, well, what can I do to help? So I think that part of what people that are approaching the market, like if you're approaching the market now for the first time, understanding that it's not something where you just maybe watch like one or two videos and you're good to go. It's like that, starting the preparation now, so that way over time, like you're going to be able to dive in and make this into something where it's going to be sustainable for you and your family and your loved ones, to give you the freedom that, well, I assume you want.
Absolutely. I was just reading Napoleon Hill's book. One of the killer of dreams, the number one he said was procrastination, and just keep putting it off. That one day I'll do this. One day I'll be able to trade. One day I'll be able to write that book, that bestseller. But it just never happens because you just keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. Where, like, sometimes a crisis like this, or maybe even having that time now that you didn't have before because you're stuck at home, it now gives you that time to say, okay, now let me plan, let me actually prepare myself, educate myself to do trading, or to how do I actually write a book, or how do I do the things I've always wanted to do. And I think this is a great way for people to finally take that first step and see that it is possible.
Yeah, I agree.
And with that, we're going to be having Jacob Baynham on. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about more ways that you could break the cycle of isolation for your trading.
And now a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mara Mindshift Guide, a trading beliefs workbook. Trading is a mental game. This workbook combines 20 years of trading experience with simple, easy to follow exercises to help you manage your mindset and move past limiting beliefs. Get your copy of the Mara Mindshift Guide today on Amazon or at marawealth.com/mindshift. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traders Mindchat Show. Today we have Jacob Baynham with us. Jacob is a freelance journalist and essayist and has reported internationally and domestically for Outside Magazine, Men's Journal, Men's Health, and more. He is the winner of a National Magazine Award and currently lives in Montana with his family. Welcome to the show, Jacob. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, man. The first question that we have for you is that we read your article in Men's Health, From Alone to a Loner, which talks about the pandemic and how it has made especially males feel more isolated than ever. What prompted you to write this article?
Yeah, so I had been noticing a kind of general lack of friendship and connection in my life and in other men in my world for a while. And then the pandemic happened and everything shut down, and it kind of made all that stand out in even sharper relief that I really was alone. And I was watching my wife stay connected with her friends through FaceTime chats and other things virtually. And I was just noticing my loneliness a lot more. So that it had been an issue that I was interested in writing about before, but the pandemic really brought it into sharp relief.
That's interesting. I'm kind of curious. So as a journalist, do you feel, was there a sense of isolation pre-pandemic, or is that the kind of field where there's a lot of connection, with, I guess, other journalists, but also with friends and family and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, so I'm a freelance journalist, which means there's not a whole lot of connection with other journalists. There are some groups here in Missoula that we'd get together once a month or so, and some loose connections that way. But no, I guess I would say, yeah, the life of a freelance journalist can be kind of lonely, especially when you're not actively on a story. Or even when you're on a story, you may be talking to someone, but you're not really sharing your deepest feelings with them. You're just sort of trying to learn from them. So yeah, it can tend to be a lonely profession, and then I might describe myself as an introvert to begin with, so I probably don't look for connection as often as some other people might.
Yeah, and as an author, I completely can relate, Jacob, especially as a novelist, when you're like in the zone, like you're just writing, like, it's kind of like everything else has gone away and it's just all about the book and about the story. So it can be a very isolating profession, just like trading, where you don't have, you're not seeing people at the water cooler every day, or you don't have those people that you can see on a daily basis to talk about the new show you binge watch on Netflix. So it could be something where you have to really take measures to change that and to build those connections.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So along your journey, once you hit pandemic and you saw your wife was creating those connections through Zoom or through the FaceTime, what made you, I guess, realize that you had to make those changes for yourself?
Yeah, I guess a few things. I had been hearing, so I'd been interested in the issue of friendship, and especially how male friendship might differ from female friendship, and how in this cultural context, a lot of men have been socialized out of some traits of, expressing their vulnerability and opening up to other people about things that really scare them, that kind of thing. So I'd been interested in this, and then I started doing some reading and hearing some other news shows about it. And one thing that really jumped out at me was that social isolation can be even more important than diet and exercise in improving the overall longevity of your life.
Wow.
And that really surprised me, because we all know we should be eating right. We all know we should be exercising, but I don't think we look at our friendships with the same level of importance. And just some research that showed social isolation can be more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That really jumped out at me as like, wow, this is an issue that I need to address, and probably other people could do to hear about it as well.
That is shocking to me. Unbelievable. That could have more health consequences than smoking 15 cigarettes. And wow, you're right. Like people do not talk about this enough.
Yeah, and what? Like in this environment, like it sort of brings that kind of an issue to the surface, because now everybody's experiencing it. But for authors, for journalists, for traders, like that's kind of something what we've dealt with for a while. I'm kind of curious. Well, why do you think it's harder for men to open up?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that was what prompted all of this thought to begin with. Was as I mentioned in the piece, I had been observing my wife keep up close contact with her friends from college, and they would text each other throughout the week and just check in, and even some of these friends were not even in the same town. Whereas I was a bit more like, I think, a lot of people, where I'd say, oh, I've got friends, and I might say of some other friend who lived far away, I might say, I only see him every couple of years, but when I do, we pick up right where we left off. And I think a lot of people have friends like that. But then I started realizing, like, a lot can happen in 2 years. You might lose a job, you might, get out of a relationship, you might have a child. It's not really enough to just, check in with someone every 2 years. So I'd been noticing that, and I think men in particular are, in this country anyway, are sort of raised to be self-reliant, and the traditional masculinity has you face your problems by yourself and not look for help, and you need to be able to do that yourself, and all of that doesn't really make for great friendship material. especially when things get stressful, research shows that men tend to go inward and isolate themselves even further. And when you compound that with a pandemic, which has us all isolated to begin with, then I think it means that men in particular are suffering from this isolation even more than women, who may already have those habits developed of checking in with their friends and being vulnerable with them.
Yeah, well, what you just described basically described like our household too, with Melissa. A lot like she was had like scheduled Zoom calls with friends. It still has that, and yeah, like I'm kind of similar to you. We're just kind of grinding away. Like, oh yeah, like I haven't spoken to this guy in a couple of like a year or so, but picking
I'll
up
remind him, like, have you checked in with this person? How are they doing? And
oh, they're fine.
I think you're right. Like, guys and girls, when they have like guys' nights versus girls' nights, and like we'll talk about everything under the sun, like how are things going in your relationship? The kids, are they driving you crazy? Then like Mike will come home. I'm like, oh my God, is your friend? Is he going to be proposing? What's going on? He's like, oh, we didn't talk about that. I'm like, why would you not talk about it? Like little things like you're right, like it just doesn't come up. Like the deeper rooted problems are, I guess, until you really need to talk to somebody. I guess for men, they really hold back. They don't want to show that vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one reason why this is such an interesting time for male friendship in particular. The idea is that men tend to do things shoulder to shoulder and women do things more face to face. So men might go to a game together or go fishing together or something like that. And women are better at just sitting down or looking at someone and talking through things. And there's so few things we can do shoulder to shoulder right now. We can't go to games. We can't go to bars like we used to. We can't do the traditionally accepted male friendship activities. So we're having to get creative. And that's why I think it's a really difficult time to make friends and to keep friends and maintain your friendships. But it's also maybe some kind of an opportunity where you can just have a good think about who you might want to reach out to and how you might want to get connected right now. And then hopefully in the future, when we can get together again, then what you'd like to do with these people and how you'd like to grow that friendship.
Mm.
This is so interesting to me. And I think that especially, we're focusing on men right now, but women, despite, like Mike mentioned, I do have my bi-weekly Zoom call with my friends or where we try to keep up with it because especially when things got really hard, we were talking about earlier that like the village was taken out from under us. I know you are a father of two young boys and we have a 5-year-old daughter, and it felt like it takes a village to raise a family. That village was taken away. My parents weren't able to help in the beginning when everything shut down. Like the schools were closed. We're doing remote learning, so I had to wear all these different hats, and I was trying to look out for the mental well-being of my daughter. So I felt more isolated than ever. Like this, we went into uncharted waters. This had never happened before. Like, what do we do? And I think that the feelings of anxiety and feeling lonely in parenthood has definitely been an issue for a lot of parents, especially in America, where we relied so heavily on other people for help, whether it was daycare, schools, parents. It just, when all of that was taken away, we were really, we were caught in a web that we didn't know how to get out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have kids, life obviously gets so much busier. And I noticed with my friend, there was definitely a drawing back of my outside social life when I had kids. There was so much to do at home. My wife works, and so we were busy during the day, and then in the evening there was so much going on that it was hard to justify. Hey, I'm going to go meet Dan at the brewery. It's just hard to justify that when we were both so busy and so pressed for time. One thing though it's so important for our children to see us taking time to keep those friendships alive. Research shows that people who have healthy friend lives usually have parents who had healthy friend lives. So maintaining those social circles and that kinship with your good friends is really important, not just for you, but also for your children. They're watching you. It's really important when they also know these friends of yours, when they can see, oh, you know, Dad's going out to meet Dan. Like, Dan's a really funny guy. And you know, and Dad comes home kind of inspired or a little bit revved up when he's out, after he has been out with Dan. Like, I see my dad become a fuller person and a happier person when he spends time with his friends. So that's probably a good thing to do. So it may seem sometimes like, oh, how can I justify the time away from my kids when their life is so busy? But it can also help you replenish your resources to be a better parent.
This is so great. I just wanted to jump in really quick for the Zoom calls that I just mentioned, that my daughter, though she should be in bed by 9 p.m., not always the case, she'll see that I'm doing the Zoom. She'll want to be a part of it. Like, she was like one of the girls. And I love that you just said that, because now she sees that even though it is virtual, that, you know, she sees that I'm smiling, laughing, that we're joking about who knows, you know, something that happened. So that makes me feel better about continuing to try to do these and maybe trying to involve her a little bit more, maybe schedule it a little bit earlier. Maybe their kids can be part of it. That's a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive sometimes, or you wouldn't think so, but research shows that people who are happy in their friend lives are better partners in their romantic relationships. They're better parents, they're better employees, and they're also just physically healthier than people who are lonely. So there are all kinds of reasons why this is important.
Yeah, wow, this is fascinating. I know that one of the topics that we had on the docket was a focus on self-improvement, but it sounds like quite a bit of self-improvement is improving social relationships, and then that's something that directly impacts and influences the self-improvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe a couple of things there. I guess it can start to sound like you know, working on your friendships can be a little bit like, oh, okay, you know, I need to eat my vegetables. I need to do a better job, like texting my friends and checking in from time to time so that I can be healthier and happier. It's kind of one of those things that is just like nagging at you. It's like, oh, I'm not doing a good job at this. But it can also really be a joy if you have a good friend, or if you have several good friends in your life, it's a real joy to go through life with friends. They help remind you of things that you've been through. They sort of keep a record of your personal growth, as you do for them. And it's just it's sharing your experience in life with someone else outside your immediate family, which is really important. And the other thing is, it just doesn't really happen by accident, especially now that we're all more isolated than ever. It's not like you just walk out the door and make a friend and, you know, are doing fun things with that person. It takes a lot of intention, and you've got to identify the people that you want to spend time with, maybe identify the reasons why you want to spend time with them, and then make that happen. And it's nothing that just happens because you want it to. You've really got to put some work into getting yourself there.
What do they say? To have a friend, you have to be a friend. So yeah, it definitely takes work on both sides.
Yeah, that's right. And just the casual check-in, you know, it's something I tend to do is I won't reach out to someone unless I have, a specific question for that person, or if something like really direct comes up that makes me think of that person. I think how I could get better is just to reach out when I casually think about someone. And it's nice to know that people are thinking of you. So I think it's that sort of casual check-in is really helpful and part of being a good friend.
Is it something that you would schedule time for? Like, I'm just trying to think about, like, all right, like my wheels are turning like that. This sounds great. Like, I want to implement this for myself. Like, are you scheduling like specific, like is it a to-do item or like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess everyone will probably approach it a little bit differently. I don't think it's a bad idea at all to schedule it like that and as a to-do item, kind of like you might schedule a workout. Like, okay, I'm gonna take this half hour to go on a jog, or
I love that.
Or something like that. Maybe take this half an hour to reflect on which people in my life I want to become closer with, and
To flex the friendship muscle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it atrophies if you don't use it, and once you start making those connections, then it's also dependent on where someone else is at. So it's quite possible that you'll reach out to someone and you'll try to create some friendship and get a friendship going, and maybe that person is not in the right spot or too busy, or doesn't make time for it like you do, and then I guess you just have to find other people and if you keep doing it, then hopefully you'll find people who are in a similar place and also have similar values and realize that this is important and that it's good for the both of you.
That's really great. I love that it's like setting the intention specifically for this. Like, it's very seldom that to your point earlier, like things don't just happen on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacob, for people who are like, Mike or other people, other traders out there who are very focused on, their work throughout the day and may have very limited time, and for Zoom or, doing something virtual is just, they've been on the computer all day. What is your advice for them to still make those connections, or how that they can kind of get out of their comfort zone to try to build some new connections?
Yeah, that's a great question right now. And I don't have a lot of great answers for that, just with our current limitations. I might say in some other era, I might say, find a club of people who are interested in similar things, and go to a coffee shop and learn Spanish with like a Spanish club if that's what you're interested in. I guess what it boils down to is finding the activities that fill you up, whatever it is, reading or exercise or languages, anything would work. Art, ideally something outside of your workday life, and then like any social exercise, find people who are also interested in those things, and maybe someone who can teach you something about that even. I think people really like to be approached when they have something to offer. For example, I really got into making sourdough bread during the pandemic. I mentioned this in the story too. And it's just something, I know a lot of people are doing that, but as a result, another friend of mine who lives in another town has been in touch with me saying like, no, how do you do this? And so he was visiting.
We get the recipe from you, Jacob. I love this.
Yeah.
Sourdough
yeah.
bread.
So I gave him some of my sourdough starter, and it was such a nice little example of our growing friendship because now we have something specific to connect about. You know, at the weekend, he'll send me a picture of some cinnamon rolls he made, and I'll send him a picture of some sourdough pizza dough that I've made. And so we have that thing to engage on. And then it's also just nice to learn from each other, like, oh, what's working for you? And so that's been a really fun thing to come out of the pandemic. And there's also just some great metaphors about friendship. Just like a sourdough culture, you have to feed it. You've got to nurture it. It doesn't just happen by itself. You've got to put some time into it, and you can take care of it, kind of like a pet almost. And you have to do that with your friendships too. So yeah,
I love that analogy. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think finding interests that you share with other people, and then finding a way to do that. And it's hard right now when we're all cloistered away, but it's possible. You know, like people are playing card games on Zoom. I know people are doing book clubs on Zoom. Lots of different things like that. In some ways, it makes it easier to loop in the friends from that you can't see face to face. You know, if they're in another city or if they're friends from high school or something, you could try to reach out to them and make some time to do something.
I love that it is like, you know, as you're a journalist, Mike's a trader, I'm an author. It's great because like you have the people within your network, you know, you have like like Mike has a Traders Mindchat room, which is a great way to connect with other traders and to be able to talk about what's working, what's not working. But then it's also good to have passions outside of that. Like you said, mentioning making sourdough bread or sort of taking up a language. So it's always good to kind of have passion, you know, your main passion, what you love to do, having people in that circle, then also thinking outside the box and finding people, because you're not only just a trader, you have so many other things that you can do and that you want to continue to learn, and that can always tie back into what you're doing for your main job.
Yeah, you know what you just reminded me of? It almost, and it kind of ties back to the fitness example from earlier. Like you ever go to the gym and you see a lot like these guys with like these gigantic arms, but then like the little scrawny legs. It's like only like working on one aspect, like just like focusing just on work and nothing else causes everything else to atrophy, and it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And in that way, I think the pandemic is feeling a little bit like a cocoon for me right now, where I know at some point it's going to end, and I don't know when we all feel comfortable being together again. I'm not sure when that's going to be. I hope it's sooner than later. But in the meantime, it's a really rare opportunity we have where we're away from other people, we're in our heads a lot, and we can really think about, who do I want to be at the end of all of this, and what skills do I want to have at the end of this, and what do I want to become? And now's the time to really put that work in, because I don't know about you guys, but my life before the pandemic was so filled up with social noise and just busyness and daily things and, you know, things to do at the weekend, that I didn't have a lot of time to just sit down and think, like, what's important to me and what do I want to get better at? Instead, I was just trying to keep my head above water. And now I think with the time that we have to be by ourselves, we can spend it, I think, wisely, just trying to focus on some things that we want to grow into once this is all over.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, what are some of the strategies that you've used to try to pick some of that apart? Well, like what strategies or tactics or things that you've done personally?
Yeah. So I should say I still need to work on this in a lot of ways. It's like it's a life journey, I think. I still tend to draw inward when I'm stressed out, and there are friends that I haven't done a good job keeping up with. And I think what I tell myself is, oh, I'm really busy and they're really busy, and this is a crazy time, and we'll just like kick that can down the road and catch up once this is all over. So yeah, full disclosure, I haven't figured it all out yet.
None of us have. That's all right.
Yeah, but there are some really nice things that have come out of it. I've started running with a friend, and this is thanks to him. Really, he reached out last summer and said, "Hey, I know you like to run. You want to start doing some longer runs together?" And we've started to do that, and for a while we were doing it every weekend, and that was something where it's all outside, and it felt relatively safe, COVID wise, and it's amazing how your conversation can evolve over the course of a 6 or 8 or 10 mile run. In the beginning, you might be a little reluctant to divulge some really important things, and by mile 6, I'm ready to tell this guy about the hemorrhoids I'm having, and just really, really, really personal details that like once you're exhausted and you have the endorphins going together, you can really like find yourself sharing parts of yourself that you wouldn't expect. And I think that's also an important part of it too, is that when you do that with friends, when you disclose to them some things that feel maybe a little scary and delicate, that tells them that you trust them with that information. And it also inspires in them, sometimes at least, inspires a desire to share some things with you. So you can really help a friendship along by just being honest with people, especially when they're people that you trust and that you think are worth sharing those things with, and that once you start disclosing some things, then they start disclosing things, and then it's just I guess we all want to hear that that our friends are people too, and struggling with issues in life as well. And
it's like the Facebook
it breaks
issue.
down some of those walls.
Yeah, like Facebook, where or a lot of women, they see like the perfect families, all the pictures that are posted are just like, yeah, everyone looks perfect, everyone looks happy, that you just start judging yourself in relation, because you think, well, my house is a mess, like my kids are running wild, and like I don't feel like, what am I doing wrong? Whereas they're feeling, like you mentioned, they're probably feeling the same exact way. Like no one's posting the picture of the messy living room, or the huge pile of laundry that needs to get done, or the mental health issues you might be dealing with. So when you finally open up to somebody about that and showing that vulnerability, I think you're right. It gives them now the opportunity to share as well. And I think that's a huge, maybe something that women are still struggling with. I think that a lot of parents, there is some judging by moms about what is the perfect way to raise kids, and there is no, you do what's best for you, and for every child's different. And I think that once we get past that and we realize that we're all struggling, we're all trying to just do the best that we can, that's when we can be more open with each other and be able to to really help each other out.
That's absolutely right, and I think now is an awful time for that, because we're no longer in each other's homes. We're no longer, sharing space at restaurants with other kids and other parents and kids, and saying like, oh, well, at least our kid's not like that. Instead, what we see is what people share on social media, and it's almost always the highlight reel. And it is a big time for self-doubt and judging other people or judging yourself, and it's a really tough time for all of that.
Now, what are some strategies do you think that we could move past that? Like obviously, like it seems like awareness is a big part of that, right? Like understanding that, yeah, like we're all kind of going through a similar thing here. Are there any other strategies, tactics to like start to move forward?
To make more friends, you mean, or in that area?
More friends, but like also like the self-judgment, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess friends help in that way too, where you can bounce some reality off of someone. You know, if you have another friend who's a father and he's telling you about his struggles with his kids, you might be able to say, yeah, gosh, I've been getting so irritable with my kids every night, and it's nice to know that that's not just my failure, that there's some kind of there's some trends to parenting, and I think right now we're just so alone that we don't have those reference points for other people and the common struggles that we're all facing. We all feel like our struggles are unique, and they're unique because we're uniquely flawed. So I think it's really important to now more than ever to be kind to yourself and try to give yourself a break when you're starting to feel that you're making a mess of things, you're doing it all wrong, you know, your life is going down the drain. There's a lot of that despair at the moment, and it's real, but it's also not really fair because we don't have much opportunity to see where everyone else is at. And when we're looking on social media and seeing just the best parts, then it's really hard to go back to our dark, quiet home and messy home and find
Nobody wants to
satisfaction.
like, I'm not opening up the closet back there and showing you all of the piles of stuff that I threw in there before we started the show.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned, like, you know, as much as your article was from a lone to a loner, I love that what you just said, Jacob, was that we're not alone. We're not alone. We're all dealing with this. We're all, you know, trying just to make the best out of the situation. So there is hope. There is hope that things are going to get better. They're just starting to get better with now the vaccines being rolled out and like more people feeling more comfortable with the things opening up, which is great. And I think connection is key. I think connection in any way, whether it is virtually, whether it is like, you know, waving to what we did like with my parents, you know, we used to wave to them from outside the house so they can still see us. They can see their grandkids. Like there are ways just to be creative during this time, and playing games, like you said, playing those type of games with your friends on Zoom. Like there's so many ways that we can connect. It's just finding what works best for you. And see, maybe it's trial and error, seeing if it works. If it doesn't, let's try something else. Let's go running. I love that. You and Mike did a virtual marathon, which how crazy is that? The marathon had to adapt. They couldn't have all those thousands of people running in the New York City Marathon. So they had it where they got to small groups, you know, then they ran and they kept track of their time. And he was able to connect with two other people that way, right, Mike? And it was a very creative way to do it.
Yeah, that was something I would recommend for anybody that wants to do that, to train more than 2 months. Right? I learned the hard way that you might want to have a little bit more training, otherwise you might struggle a little bit. But it was still a good time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's any great. Final thoughts, Jacob? Do you think based on your research and based on what you have for your own experience and with your family, that you'd like to leave somebody else who is dealing with some isolation in their own journey, that you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, maybe one thought. I know a lot of men tend to say, oh, you know, my best friend is my wife or my partner. And that's well and good. But it's a lot to ask of your partner, to be your, and I know comparatively fewer women say that of their husbands. Like, oh, my best friend is my husband. Instead they'd say, my best friend is so and so. She knows a lot about me, or whatever. So I think one tendency maybe that men in particular are struggling with at the moment is looking to their partner to be their best friend and often their therapist, and sort of the whole laundry list of the all-in-one catch-all person that they need. And that will really strain your relationship. And that was something I started to notice early on in the pandemic, is that while my wife was having these FaceTime catch-ups with her friends, and I was retreating even farther from my friends, I was looking to her for more than she had available to give me. And that was starting to strain our marriage, just, in the sense that I was asking too much of her. And I think probably a lot of people might do that with their partners, expect them to be everything for them. And that's why it's just, we're humans or social creatures, and we need to have those buckets filled by as many people as possible. It's great if we have a supportive partner to listen to us, but it's also really important that we have friends outside of our family and outside of our relationship that we can get filled up from, and be seen and listen to them, and have them listen to us.
It's so true. We've been there too, and Mike and I, we're not just being married, but also working together, and then working from home and being parents and having our child home. It just added a whole list of other challenges to our relationship. And I think you're right to be, you don't want to dump too much on each other, and to be able to still remember, first and foremost, where the foundation is that we are a couple, and that of course, we're always here for each other, but that you need to have another outlet for some of that, because it's just too much. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So, Jacob, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been amazing. You've given us a lot of fantastic information to go back, re-listen to. I can't wait to go back and pull the highlights. And this has been very, very eye-opening. Very eye-opening. Thank you.
Jacob,
well, thanks so much for having me on.
Jake, what's the best way people want to reach you or find out more about your articles or your stories? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I've got a website, jacobbaynham.com, and some contact information on there, and links to some other stories that I've written. So yeah, that'd probably be the best way.
This is great.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. We'll have this up on the podcast and on YouTube very soon. And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you again, Jacob. This is going to help so many people. We really appreciate you being on the show.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Wow, that was very eye-opening.
I mean, I knew friendships were important, but I didn't realize that how they were truly connected to physical and mental health.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about self-improvement on the show, from mindset and morning routines and physical health, but to think about friendships as its own category that requires intention and maintenance and growth. That's
Yeah, I know, he joked about the vegetables, and you have to have your vegetables, you have to go to the gym, gotta check in with friends, but it is true that it is something that is, especially now during this pandemic is more important than ever, and to come up with creative ways. He mentioned that for some people they do Zoom or calls, but if that doesn't work, he goes running with his friends. Like, they're finding ways that they can still connect in new ways than what they did before, with sporting games or going to the bar. So there is room for creativity if you really do want to build those connections.
Yeah, I now that I think of it a lot, like I do feel recharged, like after going out, spending some time out with the guys, or like having a call or something. I think that it was also important too when he was talking about like the highlight reel, like that part of the conversation too. Like I think about, you know, how you mentioned on Facebook, and like seeing like other women, or seeing
perfect
like the perfect families,
yeah.
and things like that. But it's very true for trading as well. Like it's seldom that people post about their trading losses, and I think that like part of it could be like out of fear, like what happens, not just like showing the vulnerability of the loss, but like putting the loss out there, then getting kind of bombarded with people saying like, oh, you should have done this, or you should have done that, or hey, buy my service, you know, like I can help you out. It's social media can really be a highlight reel, and you know, it's one of the reasons why, for me personally, like I've shied away often, and I've started to post a little bit more about like some trade, like stuff that wins, like stuff that loses, but shied away from that part because it's that highlight reel feel, that mentality, and I know what it's like to like kind of get into that mindset of self-comparison, and how
yeah, it's definitely damaging. I know some people have taken breaks from social media because of that, and made them really feel bad about themselves, their own lives, that they haven't gone as far as they wish. Just like as traders, maybe they wish they had reached this, so what are they doing wrong? So it really brings up a lot of those issues of self-doubt, which is another thing that Jacob mentioned. And I love that he talked about expressing your vulnerability. Like, once he found a way to express that to his friend, it allowed and opened the door for his friend to be able to open up about some of the issues that they were experiencing as well. And I realized for my own self, when I was able to open up about certain things with my friends, it definitely did open the door for me to get a phone call from them when they were dealing with something similar. And it really helped them express themselves, because I was able to face that fear of not being, you know, the perfect mom, perfect worker, whatever the case is, and being able to show that vulnerability, and being able to open up about those things to them.
Yeah, when you're vulnerable, and this is something that I learned a few years ago, back when I did that workshop with Evan, Evan Carmichael. Yeah, one of the things that they spoke about there was when you are vulnerable, you become the shield for somebody else, and now when you're the shield for somebody else is able to open up too. So it's a strength.
I love it. And Brene Brown actually mentions that vulnerability is a strength. And I think that people are just beginning to realize that. And I think that hopefully this will continue to grow as we further those friendship relationships. One last thing I just really wanted to say is that for me, when he mentioned about us building friendships in our adult years really are a reflection for our children.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That was eye-opening, because sometimes you don't make it a priority to build those friendships, or you think like, I'll have my girls' nights outside of my friends, or I'll do the Zoom call when she's asleep, not realizing how important it is for her to see me with my friends, how happy I am after being with my friends, so that she sees what building friendships could be like for her, and to have healthy friendships.
So the better we are, the better we're able to model for others and for children too.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the full list of the key highlights with our interview with Jacob Baynham, be sure to check out marwealth.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you can be sure to check out upcoming interviews in the weeks to come.
Yeah, smash the button, the bell, and the like. Go. That's the term the kids use. Oh my God. Anyway. Thanks so much for coming and tuning in, and
take it and run with it.
Yes, that's my
Build those friendships.
Yeah, take it and run with it. Take care, everybody.
Bye.